Hello, you are listening or watching to What's for Tea. Basically, two former support workers catching up over, well, we were going to say tea, but it's actually coffee. So chances are we might become more lively as recording comes along and caffeine kicks in. And my name is Andy.
My name is Lydia.
And welcome to episode, is it 4? Must be episode 4. Because I did 2, because I had to edit for 2 episodes back to back.
Yeah, we filmed back to back, yeah.
Hopefully sounds a bit better this time.
Yeah, like one for me, the caffeine had kicked in.
Second
episode.
Yeah. I think we could see that.
Me talking 100 mile an hour, being like, woo!
And almost kind of running around the studio. But also, I noticed that last time, we did this whole kind of weird thing where we just took
I'm not doing it this time. You told me not to.
Yeah, and hopefully that's going to look better and less forced.
It wasn't forced though.
It looked it though.
I know, but it wasn't. It was just pure coincidental. So
we've had a bit of a break.
Yes, we have. You've been on holiday.
Yes.
How was it?
So nice.
Yeah.
So relaxing.
Oh.
Cornwall is one of my favouriteest places ever.
It is good. Cornwall is good.
It's it's the home of all good things.
I don't know. I think in Cornwall there's just a different vibe, isn't there? Like especially when it comes to the beaches and just like the people. And I don't know if it's just because we're in holiday mode when we're going to Cornwall.
Probably. And anytime you go down to Cornwall, it automatically makes you think of holiday as well. So
yeah.
You kind of get there and you automatically feel relaxed and chilled and laid back.
Yeah, I love Cornwall.
And
Also, I do feel like we should apologise in advance. I did not pick my choice of clothing very well today.
Oh yeah.
I'm so if you see a sofa or a palm tree on my clothing, it's because I'm potentially blending in with the green screen. Note to future self, Lydia, don't wear green on filming day. I really didn't think it through.
I'll try and WhatsApp you in the future to kind of remind you.
Basically, Andy is the producer, the editor, and wardrobe
assistant.
Yeah, I'm just the star, and I just turn up.
I've not graduated to kind of wardrobe or anything like that yet, but give me time. Got a bit of space back behind the green screen. It'll work out fine.
Yeah.
But anyway, also, I kind of broke the habit of Lifetime.
What's that?
Over my holiday.
What was it?
I saw work people. I saw work friends.
Yeah.
And,
I'm assuming you're talking about us me and you and Chris going to the cinema.
Yes.
I just didn't want to assume that I was the work friend you were talking about and then be disappointed.
I mean, there were 2 examples. There was.
Oh, you're seeing other work friends now, Andy.
There was another thing as well.
I feel heartbroken.
But
we went to the cinema.
Importantly,
I know, and we saw DeadPool.
DeadPool and Wolverine.
DeadPool and Wolverine, yeah.
And oh my word, it was better than I hoped.
Well, I've never seen any of the Deadpool movies at the cinema. So this was the first time. And for people that are fans, don't come and hate me, but I'm not a big fan of Deadpool.
Okay.
I think it's just one of those things where it just doesn't hit the mark for me. It's just it's not the movie's fault. I think it's just a me thing. But I do love Wolverine. Grew up watching X-Men and Wolverine, so that's why I went to the cinema to see this one, and I'm so glad I did because I was not disappointed. It's my favourite out of all of the Deadpool movies.
It somehow managed to kind of hit the action thing that I thought. It was very much kind of a Marvel version of kind of 80s, 90s action movie, which was kind of was expecting. But I was also hoping that it would hit the kind of more Marvel-esque kind of emotional beats as well, which I was like, flipping heck, some of the stuff that they're talking about is like, oh my.
I was laughing because I can't really comment on the action movies during the time that you just mentioned because it was probably before my time.
Amazon Prime is a thing. Your homework is go away and watch Terminator 2.
Oh, I've watched Terminator 2.
So therefore you can comment on 90s action movies.
I thought you meant like as they came
90s action movies, 80s movie action.
I think it's 80s.
When Terminator 2 came out in the 80s?
Oh, 1 came out in the 80s, I think. 2 came out in the 90s.
Okay, so that, Terminator 1 was like the old one.
Yeah, I was really surprised actually how much heart was in the film, because obviously I think Deadpool's known for its sense of humour and things like that, but in this one it was quite an emotional movie.
So comics aren't above kind of being a bit more heart-esque and having a more of an emotional storyline, but I think the first, I've got to admit, not actually seen the second movie yet.
Yeah.
But the first one, and Deadpool is generally known, right at the moment, movie-wise, for being very action-orientated.
Yeah.
But I was like, kind of really hoping that they would kind of go for the emotional storyline a bit.
Well, I think they had to, because Wolverine, even though he doesn't necessarily demonstrate that, he's quite an emotional being. If you watch all of the X-Men movies and Logan, like, it's just more in a subtle way than...
And I guess after Logan, they have to kind of deal with certain plot points of Logan.
Yeah. We got to be careful we don't give out too
we
many
are desperately
spoilers.
trying not to talk
in case anyone hasn't seen it.
So we're trying to talk about Deadpool and Wolverine without talking about Deadpool and Wolverine because we don't want to be accused of ruining Deadpool and Wolverine. I don't think I've said the words Deadpool and Wolverine so many times.
I know, right? We need a little count.
5 times?
Maybe. But I think the reason there's so much heart in this is because obviously... if people don't know this, then I do apologise, but it's been out for some time. But obviously, Wolverine finishes with him in Logan dying.
Yes, and I think the spoiler embargo time on Logan's probably passed.
Yeah,
I think
but if anyone has a go at me because they haven't seen it, that's on you, not on me. But yeah, I think there's that whole thing about, you know, the grief of the Logan dying that comes into a little bit of the movie. And then obviously, without going in through many spoilers, the Wolverine in this movie is dealing with grief as well. And, you know...
He's not in a happy place.
No.
And whilst he wasn't in a happy place in Logan, and he definitely went on an emotional journey throughout the main kind of X-Men stories, he is not in a happy place.
Yeah, he's probably the most miserable Wolverine that we have potentially seen.
Yes. And Deadpool is also not in a good place.
No, he's not.
Either. And whilst Wolverine is dealing with his own sense of loss and grief, Deadpool is very much trying to work out his place in the world. Yeah,
identity, and he's also dealing with some grief as well in terms of what he expected for the future not happening, and some relationships not kind of panning out as he would hope, and there's grief in that as well. And yeah, so they, you know, and Wayne talks about it in the movie. Is Wayne or Wade?
Wade.
I don't know why I keep calling him Wayne. It's another movie I'm thinking of, that probably. But Wade is...
Wayne's World?
I don't know. But he talks about how he uses sense of humour in the movie as a coping mechanism for his actual like feelings. And that's why there's a lot of humour in this movie as well. And, you know, as someone that uses sense of humour as a coping mechanism...
I've never noticed that.
Andy uses sarcasm, if you couldn't tell.
I do not know what you mean.
But he uses it to mask his true feelings, whereas Logan in this movie, and I think through all the X-Men movies, uses anger. And
alcohol.
And alcohol, of course, but also keeping people at an arm's length, I think, is his coping mechanism as well. And it's interesting that he does this in this movie as well when dealing with grief. So yeah, no, it was just a very interesting film. There was loads of like little subtle messages. It was
probably one of the best movies I've seen in regards to how it looks at men's mental health.
Yeah, it really
Without
does.
it being a men's mental health movie.
Yeah, and actually saying the words mental health.
The words mental health never actually come up.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's about men's mental health.
Yeah, pretty much. And how they deal with it and process it and work it out. And I think that potentially goes quite nicely onto the topic of today.
Nice segue in.
Thanks. Learn from the best. Yeah, he's not in the room. So we had actually planned to talk about this in this episode, but we also had a request as well to talk about grief. And the reason that I thought today we could talk about grief is because I recently, and I'm still going through grief. So, and some people will be like, whatever, when I talk about what this is about. But obviously, Cosmo got mentioned in the first few podcasts. Sadly, Cosmo had to be put to sleep. So Cosmo died. And some people are like, oh, it's just a pet. But there's a whole grief process when it comes to a pet. And sadly, he hadn't been well for a very long time. So it was the right decision to put him to sleep. So yeah, my little fur baby is no longer around. So yeah. And I thought, do you know what, as I'm going through it, it would be a good topic to talk about because I don't think, especially in British culture, don't know about other cultures, we don't really tend to talk about grief that much. People tend to be like, oh, I'm really sorry for your loss, and then kind of move on from it and don't really know how to talk to that person.
Talk about it.
Yeah. So yeah, I thought today we could talk about it in terms of a supporter element of how we can support someone, talk about what grief is.
I've got a funny feeling this might be a part one.
Yes, because there's a lot to talk about.
Because we have talked about DeadPool and Wolverine for a little bit. But I think let's talk a bit about why we don't talk about it. And I wonder if part of it is because it reminds us of our own kind of grief moments.
Possibly, yeah.
And we don't like thinking about that sort of stuff.
No.
I mean, I know that when we talked about Cosmo, it kind of reminded me of kind of moments I found out that like pets had died and things like that. And so therefore I was like, well, actually, why do I want to talk about this? Why do I want to kind of open that kind of emotional door? And I was like, well, actually, that could be a reason why people in general don't do that.
Yeah, no, I think you've got a good point there. I think, yeah. And I think a lot of people, either because they didn't know how to deal with the grief themselves, and they kind of, and I think most people fumble their way through grief. I don't think anyone's an expert in managing grief themselves. And I think it kind of reminds them of them not knowing how to deal with it or handle it or what it was. So therefore they don't know how to support someone going through it because...
Fumbling our way through grief. I like that.
Yeah. Because I just think, there's no right way to handle grief in terms of like, there's no like textbook of like, you need to do this and this, and it fits for everyone. I think it's very personal.
It's not you should go out, do this and you'll feel better.
Yeah.
And if anyone says that, they are talking garbage.
They are. They've either not been through the process themselves or they're just palming you off with an easy kind of solution because they don't want to talk about it.
I think for one moment we should actually talk about exactly what grief
I agree.
Is. I feel we've may have jumped about 20 steps a little bit.
Probably.
So when we're talking about grief, we are literally meaning that moment of loss when you realise that something or someone who is in your life isn't in your life anymore, or something or someone who should be in your life isn't in your life. And trying to work out it's like your place in the world and what the world looks like in the loss of that figure. Yeah.
And I think it's key to talk about losses. Obviously, we're talking about death, but we're also talking about, I think breakups as well. You can grieve, if you've had a falling out with a friend, there's a grief process of losing a friend from falling out, divorce, or you've fallen out with anyone like family or anything. There is an element of grief that you go through. Predominantly, if you Google grief, it predominantly talks about the loss of by death.
Yeah.
But I think the process is very much the same. So do you want to go through, because there is stages of grief that people will go through, and I think it's key to talk about when we talk about the stages of grief. It's not a linear process. When we're describing it in a linear process, just because obviously we'll be explaining it, but the process is more of either it can be a cycle, it can be a bit of like a mind map kind of way of dealing with things.
So basically, there's a theory of 5 stages of grief.
Yes.
Which are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And that is just a theory. You might hear it kind of being bounded around as these are 5 stages of grief. And to start with, you kind of feel this way, you feel this way, you feel this way. Again, that's complete garbage. All this is, it's like a helpful kind of idea of the sort of feelings that you might have at some point.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that you're not going to go from like, what was the last one again?
Acceptance.
Acceptance. And be all okay.
Yeah.
And
I think, that's a good point. It's like, it doesn't mean if you're acceptance that you're never gonna, feel sad again about it or anything like that. I think, grief never really goes away as well. It's something that will come and go throughout your life when you think about that person that you've lost. However, the initial kind of grief process, you'll probably experience the extreme ends of these emotions that were just listed through the stages. So obviously, the first one we talked about was denial, wasn't it? Is it denial? It
might have been, let's say denial.
So you're basically in denial that this person is gone, and some people might say denial/shock. It's a shock to the system that they've gone, even though if you were there or whatever, and that can go on for as long as an individual needs to go through that process.
And I think when we talk about shock denial, that could look similar to like depression.
Yeah.
Because it's quite a numbing experience.
Yeah. And it can also look like that person's perfectly fine and you might be like, oh gosh, they're not really feeling anything because they are numb or they're in denial and they're like, oh, everything's fine. But there will be a point where it probably will hit them. And then the sadness comes in and the other kind of emotions that come along with kind of grief.
Indeed. Now, this is really bright and breezy topic of conversation. So, look after yourself. I'm not finishing the podcast here. What I'm saying is, if you're listening to this and it's like, flipping heck, this is really kind of flipping depressing and I'm not really happy with this. You know what? Stop listening.
Yeah.
Come back.
Yeah, come back, yeah. Take a break, then finish the rest.
Yeah. Or
it can, we're not purposely trying to trigger anyone or anything.
And
we're not experts
in this.
But it's a topic I think that as a support worker, we work with our...
You saw this coming up a few times, haven't you? Kind of recently as well. And I think going back to kind of what we talked about to start with, this... I wondered if the reason why you saw it coming up is because this is something we don't talk about.
Yeah, and interestingly, it's nothing that it's not what we talk about in society. We don't really tend to talk about it with other people that are going through the same grief. If you lose a family member, it's something that you don't necessarily talk with the other family members going through it. But as a support worker, it is something that sadly we talk about with our young people a lot. And I think some of the more mature end of our young people, our service users as well, sometimes it's the first time someone's spoken to them about grief, even though they've experienced grief before, because no one talks about it. And I just think it's a really important issue. Apologies if it is hard hitting and it's upsetting and it's triggering, but sadly it's an essential topic that needs to be discussed.
I just became very aware that this was...
That
we'd move from talking about saying how many times I could say the words DeadPool and Wolverine
to a very then serious.
Whoa.
Yeah.
And so I've not made it light for the sake of making it light.
No.
I've purposely made this conversation lighter because it's like, actually, we were going as a listening experience. We were probably going quite dark and heavy and probably not as much fun as we have been in the last couple.
No.
It's not a fun thing though.
No, it's not. But also I do think like with this podcast as well, there is going to be times where there is going to be more lighter topics, kind of more heavy hitting topics, because all of it, is, the heavy hitting topics are essential that we need to discuss.
Oh, totally.
But it's hard.
Talk about the 6th stage.
Go for the 6th stage.
Grief.
Yeah.
So earlier I talked about the 5 stages of grief and how there was this big theory that there are 5 stages of grief.
Yeah.
On which are more of a framework rather than actual kind of, you go from stage 1 to stage 2 to stage 3.
Yeah.
Actually, you can go from stage 3 to stage 2 and so on and so forth. some dude has kind of come up with an idea of there being a sixth stage.
Okay.
And that is finding meaning in
Okay.
it. And I was introduced to this idea by our clinical supervisor over like the 2020, 2021 kind of years, otherwise known as the peak of the pandemic. And I'll leave you to kind of work out why that topic came up. But the concept of finding meaning in it, I found really helpful in that. Actually, it suggests there isn't an end stage. There isn't an ending to it.
No.
But there's not, and it's not even an acceptance. Because actually, I'm not going to accept some of it. That's all.
No,
But I can find meaning in it. I can find, actually, this is how it went down. This is how it's affected me. This is how they affected me as a person. This is how their life story has affected me. This is how their death has affected me. I can take that and I can move on and work out what that means to myself moving forward.
Yeah, no, 100%. I like that. And I think it's also key when we talk about acceptance as well. It's accepting that person is no longer there, not necessarily accepting like as in like you're happy about it, acceptance. But I do like that in terms of finding meaning there, because I think that's what we do as human beings. We try and find meaning in everything because, you know, we like to explain things and, you know, and I like that. And I think that hopefully will be helpful to some of the listeners. But I'll probably take that with me as well. So thanks for that, Andy. Thanks for that.
I think we should probably move on a little bit and talk about coping and things to do.
Yeah, more of the support kind of side of things.
Personally, I've not put it in my notes. Sorry, it's just come to mind. There was a computer game which I came across around the pandemic years, called Child of Light.
Okay, not heard of it.
It's not an indie game. It's made by Ubisoft, but it's it's not one of their main kind of. It's not it's not one of their big games. At all. It's not like an Assassin's Creed or anything like that, where they pump out a new title every couple of years. It's a very kind of arty game. It's available on quite a few platforms for right time, not a lot of money. It's very fairy tale-esque. There's a bit of grinding involved where you've got to kind of fight monsters, get health points, fight the same monsters again. But the storyline is unexpectedly about, I'm trying to explain this without spoilers. There's an unexpected kind of level of kind of talking about mental health, depression, grief as well. And is it about the main character's search for kind of coping with her own loss? We don't really know. Not that clear. But it could be.
So some really big topics then, like deep, heavy topics that they're covering in a game. I like that.
And right at the end, there is some closure.
Oh, nice. You don't always necessarily get that with a game either.
No.
So that might be something someone finds helpful then.
Yeah, so Child of Light would be my personal suggestion. But I'd also suggest gaming in general can be quite...
I think sometimes with the coping, it is distractions. However, just bear in mind the distractions are just potentially delaying
you
from going through the process. So just bearing that in mind. I think for me, when I've gone through periods of grief through my life, I think what's helped me the most is being around people. You're not going to feel like being around people, but actually I think being around the right people. And I say that because there is some people that being around is just not helpful, might not make you feel better.
No.
You might end up support working them a little bit. So yeah, going through, being around the right people where they know what's going on, you know, they can, you know, either make you feel better, distract you if that's what you want, talk to you about it if you want. And I think that's been a big thing for me going through any kind of grief, is being around the right type of people. And for us as like Christians as well, going to church has been really helpful. And I know some people have found, you know, that are not Christian, going to church still being incredibly helpful. Again, trying to find that meaning in a time of loss as well. So yeah, I would say those are kind of my two key coping mechanisms that I found. I would also say as well, like, as a coping mechanism or a way to kind of help yourself is counselling. Because they're professionals. They know this. They know the theory of the 5 or 6 stages of grief, and they can really help talk you through it. And also, if you're going through a grief as a family or as a friendship, and you're like, well, I don't want to burden them because they're going through it, having someone that's an outsider can be really helpful. And you know, I'm not ashamed of saying that I've had counselling because of grief. And it's been really helpful going through that process. And I think if I hadn't had counselling, that process would have been a lot longer than it was. And it was just nice to have a space where you talk for an hour about yourself, the person, how you're feeling, because you don't really tend to get that in your day. I
used the words clinical supervisor earlier. That is basically a fancy professional term for sort of counsellor. Yeah,
so in our job, obviously we work with young people, we deal with hard, heavy like topics with our young people. We have clinical supervisors that we see on a monthly basis to talk about anything work related that might be affecting us, and sometimes our personal life as well can bleed into our work. So yeah, it is just another fancy way of counselling.
Sort of counsellor.
Yeah, exactly. And also there is specific grief counsellors you can go to rather than generic counsellors, and we can leave some links.
Yeah, so there's going to be a series of links attached to this.
Yes.
Either if you're watching it on Facebook or Spotify or wherever you are watching, it'll be there. And also, just to start to finish this on a lighter mode, and we might come back to this subject. Let us know if you want us to come back to this.
Yeah, please do.
Because there are some areas that we've totally just brushed over. Hello to YouTube.
Hello to YouTube.
Yeah, we're gonna be on YouTube.
Are we gonna be on YouTube?
We're gonna be on the YouTube channel.
Oh my goodness! I could become a star.
Starting from, I'm gonna say starting from this episode, but it's not gonna look like that because I'm gonna put
the older ones up as well. Yeah.
As well.
Oh, how exciting! Yeah. Oh, nice. So yeah, so now we're gonna be on another platform where people can leave comments and things like that. But if you do want us to continue this topic, we can do, because like I said, it's a big topic. As Andy said, we've brushed over some things, so please let us know. But hopefully
my notes are filled with things that we've not talked about.
No, exactly. And I think it is such a hard, heavy topic. I know that we can break it up a bit by talking about it in another episode.
Well, we really should stop there.
Yes. I feel sorry for Andy for this episode. Sorry, Andy, you're going to have to edit this.
Well, hopefully, as long as the sound has worked out, it might be all right. Yeah. I don't think there's anything too much that we need to cut. Maybe not. Maybe you have. Anyway, I'm now rambling.
Shall we end?
We should end. You can tell I've not included the ending notes on here. But thank you for listening and or watching.
Thank you.
If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Or if you're listening on Spotify or Apple, please follow us to get the next episode into your podcast stream. Until next time, take care.
Take care. Bye.